First of all, big welcome from all of us at Giant Swarm to the first panel talk about people topics from Giant Swarm. I'm super happy to have you all here. Super happy to have the panelists here as well from different companies all across Germany for the fun of it. My colleague Tommy will have an eye on the chat and on the questions. So in case you have any questions or any comments, feel free to use these functions. Tommy will then ping me and we will get it included in the conversation. And then I have another colleague with me, which is Josh. And Josh actually prepared a little intro / getting into the zone and getting settled into the entire topic for us. Therefore, I will hand over to Josh for a few slides about remote work and basically a current update of what's happening in the world.
Thank you, Mirko. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Mirko said, I am Josh. I'm a HR manager at Giant Swarm, and yeah, I'm going to give you kind of a brief statistical introduction to remote work over the past few years. Don't worry, I won't keep you too long. So, first things first, let's address the elephant in the room. And I couldn't find a room emoji, but a house will have to do. So that would be COVID-19, the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, there had been a bit of a shift towards remote working, but at a pace that could only really be described as glacial. The pandemic accelerated this trend, and I think that most people agree that work won't really be the same again. As McKinsey and Co. put it, the virus has broken through cultural and technological barriers that prevented remote work in the past, setting in motion a structural shift in where work takes place, at least for some people. We found that as the worst of the pandemic eased over the summer months of 2021, we saw some large multinationals such as Apple pull back on their remote work offering, but this was met with instant consternation from employees. In an internal survey, 68% of employees agreed that the lack of location flexibility would likely cause them to leave Apple. It seems whether companies like it or not, remote working is here to stay. So, the list that you can see in your screen is part of an analysis done by the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. It shows the top 10 job categories with the most remote working opportunities. Here we see IT jobs lead the way when it comes to remote work, alongside admin, legal, and human resources. The ability to work only needing a laptop is a large factor in the accessibility of remote working. In their analysis of remote working, McKinsey and Co. found that more than 20% of the workforce could work remotely 3 to 5 days a week as effectively as they could if working from an office. If remote work took hold at that level, that would mean 3 to 4 times as many people working from home than before the pandemic, and would have a profound impact on urban economies, transportation, and consumer spending, amongst other things. In August of 2021, FlexJobs surveyed more than 4,000 job seekers about their ideal work arrangement post-pandemic, and 58% said that they want a fully remote position, while 38% said they favor a hybrid arrangement. To be competitive as a company trying to secure the best talent in 2021 and 2022, it seems increasingly necessary to at least offer some form of remote working to employees. On the flip side, for other occupations such as manufacturing, agriculture, and construction, the opportunity is much harder to come by. The chart above shows that for these professions, the effective productivity would drop to between 7 to 18%. This might seem somewhat obvious, as it could prove difficult to harvest a wheat field from one's living room, but we'll get there one day. The point is, on-site work will always exist, as it is a necessity in some professions. In this webinar, I think we will really be focusing more on the previous professions with a higher feasibility of remote working. That's enough of the serious stats though. Let's move on to some of the more positive numbers. So 71% of remote workers say they're happy in their jobs, compared to 55% of on-site workers. That's according to Owl Labs. 86% of employees say that flexible or remote jobs will allow them to reduce stress. Low happiness and high stress are two of the main contributing factors to high employee turnover. They're reasons that people leave their jobs. 97% believe that a remote job or a job with flexibility will improve their overall quality of life, according to the FlexJobs annual super survey. And finally, 81% surveyed would be more loyal to their company if they had flexible work options. Do with these numbers what you will. Back to Mirko at the desk.
the numbers and see a bit of what's happening in the world. Before we start, we would obviously love to understand a bit better who is currently here. For that, we have a little poll prepared that Tommy could just quickly launch. We're not that many people in here. So maybe you could just give us a quick overview of what's currently happening on your side. Are you fully remote or are you in home office due to the pandemic? All right, so we have 5 attendees currently. We have 5 answers. So with that, we can continue. We have 2 people fully remote and 3 in home office due to the pandemic. I would say we jump right into the conversation. Just a quick one, because I didn't introduce myself at all when I started. My name is Mirko. I'm also at Giant Swarm, just like Josh, working as an HR manager here as well. But I'm not alone here today. And the other people are far more important than me for today's topic. Because with me, we have Anna Sebach. She is a former geologist / geological researcher, hard word, and she started her journey with people business at Vuga, and she's currently the head of people at Tilda. So welcome and thanks for being with us, Anna. Next, we also have Valerie with us, former Chief Revenue Officer at Opiniary, Twitter alumni, 10 plus years of experience in B2B marketing, and currently at Remi, trying to make remote work a bit more human and a bit more connective. Hi, Valerie. And I also forced someone in here more or less, and that is Ollie, our CCO, and you can see it, one of the rare people at Giant Swarm who actually comes to the office daily while pushing remote work hardly and our remote culture as well, but at the same time being the inventor of this lovely cup that says "Real Hugs Rock." Ollie, hi.
Thank you.
And
good intro.
With that, thanks. As if I know you. I would actually love to start with the question of what is your truth about remote work? So maybe Ollie, you want to start as I started with you or ended with you.
Okay, I think what I mostly tell people is that in the end, I'd love everybody to be in the same office. But that just doesn't work. Or let's put it differently. The amount of people and quality of people and diversity of people I get through being a fully remote company is unparalleled to what I would get in any one city I would choose. And if I could get all those people into the office in Cologne, that would be great. That's very visible when we do like on-sites, and we try to do 1 to 2 a year where we get everybody together on an island or on whatnot. So that's always lovely. But as mentioned, the quality of people you get in remote settings and especially the diversity that is really helpful is unparalleled. Mm-hmm. That's my one truth about remote work.
Okay. And then we have someone, and I talked already very quickly with her before the start of this, who is more a fan of office work, I guess. Anne.
My position around remote work is actually, I love it and I hate it at the same time. Maybe because I'm a people person and I need this center of atmosphere in an office to show accessibility to the few people who are in the office these days. And actually, it is, especially for people, a huge challenge. We don't want to force people to be on site, but we also see people suffering a lot from being isolated and not so motivated as they could be if they were surrounded by coworkers. Mm-hmm. And at the moment we are working hybrid, and this is also the way we will go to the future. But I believe hybrid combines both worst things from on-site and remote worlds.
Mm-hmm. And now, as if it would be planned, we have someone who is working exactly against that, and basically trying to get the loneliness away, trying to connect people in the remote space. Valerie, maybe your truth.
Yes, I'm the most extreme of all that have just presented. We don't even have an office, so we're fully remote, distributed team working across Europe and Asia right now, and I love it. I'm an extrovert. I need people around me as well, so I wouldn't necessarily say that this would be an obvious, because usually it's what people say, that extroverts are the ones that actually want to go to the office. I do like to be in the office, but I also agree with Oliver that I would never be able to hire such a fantastic team all across the world, so to say, if I would kind of limit myself to a certain location. On the one hand, I'm a huge believer in diversity and inclusion, and thinking of all the things that the office limits us with being with our families, being able to take care of elder people, etc., that is kind of limiting us in that sense. I very much believe that remote work is the way to go. I do believe in in-person interaction. I think it is important. I just think it is something that needs to be done very proactively and very intentionally with purpose, and not just sitting next to each other for the sake of it, because we think that we need this to be motivated, because I think motivation comes intrinsically. It comes from a great vision. It comes from transparency. It comes from being able to work on things that you truly like to do, and not so much from sitting next to each other. This is my truth about remote work.
Thank you for that. Something that I find quite interesting is the mix that we have here now. We have Valerie with Remy. You guys started completely remote from the very beginning. I know Giant Swarm in the beginning started Cologne-based. Then we realized at some point, people are all across the world. We want to find the greatest people. And then the decision was made at some point, if I remember correctly, that we go completely remote. And then we have Anne, who is still, I guess, more or less Berlin focused with Tilda. Maybe your thoughts on that. Any ideas what that has as an impact on the people, what happens there, and what that does with the culture as well?
First question I have. Valerie, what is your office address?
It's in Berlin.
But
so
is
we're a
it
German company.
okay? But so you have an office, like currently
We have
you
an
still
office.
need an office.
We
You
have
need
an office address, but we don't. It's not a co-working space or anything, right? It's really just an address. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, the biggest part here for us is like we need somewhere to store stuff, and we even by now we're 7 years old. We even have a basement, you know. So that there is stuff we have that needs to be somewhere that nobody wants to have at home. That's one reason we have an office. I have to admit, I like going to the office, but I don't necessarily need people there. I like, and I think that's the biggest thing we probably need to also address, or like we know we need to address. There are different people. There are people that can fall out of their bed into their chair and start working and then fall back into their bed, kind of, and like can have that mental model, and others can't. I, for example, like if I would be at home and the kids have a problem, I'd like to help the kids. I can't mentally say, I'm at the office now, so I'm out. That doesn't work for my brain somehow, you know. I have other people that can do that. And I think, so if we address that, I think, you need some kind of office sooner or later. You might have that where somebody wants to work. But I agree that it's more that people need to be able to find their space where they work remotely. Remote doesn't mean working from home. That's probably.
I think that is an amazing point you're making, because this is something that we made sure from the very beginning everyone has the opportunity to book a co-working space, because we believe in the fact that, yes, obviously not everyone likes to be at home, not everyone has the space and the ability to work from home. Not everyone has the headspace they need to work from home because they might have kids at home. I think it's important to mention here, though, that remote work doesn't mean remote work during the pandemic. So probably there will be kindergartens open and stuff like that. But still, there might be a fact where there are kids at home and stuff like that. So obviously, we need a place where we can step outside. And I do agree with the fact, I think it's one of the most difficult parts. I think Mirko also mentioned it yesterday when we shortly spoke, that one of the most difficult things is actually to kind of be healthy yourself and go outside still when working remotely, and taking care of that and being able actually to still go outside. And I think it's a great way to then say you have a co-working space where you can go, because this is where you can you have this reason to go outside, and you also have this space where you can work in a productive way. So I absolutely agree that this is needed.
How do you do that on? Oh, sorry, Anne.
Plus, if you work in a co-working space, then there's again kind of social interactions with other people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think this is something that many people can't right now distinguish what they really need. So I think many make a false consequence out of what has been happening now throughout the past almost 2 years, which was, I need social interaction, and that's why I need an office. But as you just mentioned, it can also be a co-working space, it can be a cafe, it can just mean you need to go outside every once in a while because you need kind of inspiration. This is completely fair. And I think this is a really good point.
My pro tip is private co-working spaces. That's what I started. I started working together with a friend and opening a co-working space in my living room, basically. That's also working. Ollie, you wanted to say something?
No.
Okay. I would be curious.
I can't say something, but
go ahead.
Probably have questions.
No, I will not stop you. Go ahead.
The only thing I'd be interested in what the others think, and there I have we have a company that was just at their office opening. They just opened a new office, big office, shiny office at the Rhine. Very nice consultancy company. Great opening, lots of fun, drinks and everything, and very diverse team. And they're actually hiring people very remotely from different countries globally, and they're flying them over and giving them work visas and having them be here, which kind of attaches them relatively closely to the company. In our case, in fully remote, if you quit and move jobs, you move from Zoom to Meet. That's it. You might not even change your laptop, which is interesting. So obviously we try to do a lot to make people feel at home. But how do you take care of that, or how much do you think like the people know each other and hang out with each other or not plays a role, or how do you create a culture that makes people not take it as a salaried thing and that's it?
That people don't feel like involuntary freelancers, although they are part of a team, right? Because what you just mentioned is basically, and I think that's very true. I would just translate it probably in a different way. Culture is the glue that holds people at the company and retains them, so to say. And if you are not able to replicate this in a remote setting, then this is hard. And this is the key reason why I think many companies decide against a fully remote setup and decide for a more hybrid setup, because they think that culture and team spirit and stuff like that cannot be replicated. I guess this is also due to the fact that many have been trying to do this, but it didn't work, meaning doing virtual team drinks, doing virtual coffee chats, doing virtual lunches, just kind of trying to replicate whatever has been working before, and it didn't. So most of the people I spoke to said diminishing returns over time. People don't come anymore to those virtual things. So what are you actually doing, right? What can you do to create this competitive advantage before this other company that is actually now trying to hire your people and you're just moving from Zoom to Meet, as Oliver just said. So I think it's a very real problem. And this is exactly what we're trying to solve at Remy right now, is helping teams to feel connected by giving them basically guidance and facilitation by using rituals in their teams, to not kind of only focus on one-off activities so much, not planning so much over and over and over again. This is hard, right? This is time intensive. When you think about culture building in a remote setting, it's a lot more proactively. You need to plan. It sounds a bit unromantic, but it doesn't happen spontaneously in the coffee kitchen anymore. And this is the hard part. And you need to make sure it happens. You need to have a systematic approach, processes to connect, so to say, rituals to connect the team. And I think this is something that needs to be in place, because if it's not, then it's hard. And the other thing, I think, I do still believe very much in the fact of in-person offsites or retreats, as you mentioned. So this is something I would still do. We're planning one in Barcelona next month. Hopefully it can still happen due to COVID, but it's not that working remotely means you're not meeting in person and that you cannot have and create personal connections. I think it's a very important part of making this work.
Sorry, I believe leadership is actually the key question. And this doesn't differ from if you're working on site or in a remote world. So you have to make sure you do have strong leadership in place, building this trust culture, because you can also show a huge amount of flexibility when you're working on site, right? But this is actually the driver of getting your team together, creating this atmosphere of trust, psychological safety, and listen to your people and listen to their needs, and then try to bring individual solutions which fits to everyone in the end. And then again, it's not about working on site or remotely, in my opinion.
There was a question actually to Valerie about giving a few more examples on the actual rituals that you do. Maybe you can give some examples there.
So there are a couple of things that I think many companies have also already installed. It's a simple thing like doing a daily check-in. And it doesn't need to be a synchronous kind of stand-up that you hop on a call every day. It can also be just an asynchronous thing where you check in with each other on a daily basis. You ask each other how you're doing, and you're asking what everyone has planned. This creates transparency. This creates sense of belonging in a way, because everyone is sharing it, and you get more context for each other, and you can actually start conversations based on these things because you know what's happening, and you can also interact with each other. It's one thing I think that's very important to do. If it's synchronous or asynchronous, doesn't matter. One thing that we have installed in our team is practicing appreciation every week. So we have a thank you box installed, for instance, where every Friday we ask, what are you thankful for? Saying thanks to your colleagues is something that we proactively kind of support in the sense. So it's not just a kudos channel on Slack, but it's really kind of proactively nudging everyone into kind of thinking about it and reflecting on it, because it's also part of culture. And then it's more about kind of how can you bring back those informal conversations, right? And how can you proactively give people more context? So there are a couple of things that you can do. There's rituals like highlights, lowlights that people do. This is also something that you've been doing in the office, right? It's more about kind of proactively also making sure it happens, sharing learnings, best practices. This is also a ritual that you can do on an ongoing basis. Something that we also enjoy a lot is we call it share your world. So we're proactively sharing with each other pictures, giving each other a blink into the world of the others, because since we don't work with each other every day, we don't see each other in the office, and people are working everywhere in the world. We haven't even met them when onboarding them, right, in person. So it's really interesting to find out and learn more about the different cultures, being able to actually, feel connected, getting this personal kind of relationship. And one other thing that we also do a lot is kind of working with team questions, with icebreakers, kind of helping each other kind of get to know each other better. And I think it's more about kind of coming up with the rituals that fit to your team and that make you and your culture unique, and then kind of just trying to do this in a repetitive setting so that there's some kind of structure to it. So it's not just left to, oh, my team lead now finally finds time next to all the other kind of KPIs and to-dos they have. It's more of something that really takes place and proactively is in short. I hope that helped, Edda.
What I found out is that actually, of course, since 20 months, we are all trying to transport the office feeling into the remote world. And so maybe it's even easier for me how we try to do this instead of only emphasizing on the advantages on being on site. So what we were playing around with was like, if you have an on-site meeting, and of course, not everyone is accountable and on time and punctual. And usually those meetings, those minutes are used for chit-chat and just blah, blah, blah discussions before they can officially start the meeting. And if you turn this practice into remote meetings and just leave space, maybe even invite for 5 minutes earlier or start 5 minutes late, that people can connect and without having those structured icebreaker questions, which could be the official kickoff of the real meeting then, but just leave space that people can talk to each other and also create an atmosphere of off-topic things they would like to follow up to a later point of time.
Agreed. You need the right people for that do that, but I fully agree. Like the first few minutes is chit chat just because you can, because in the real office, people would have to move from meeting to meeting. And I know from a lot of people from big corporates that we work with that just find it very stressful that by now you have a meeting from 3 to 4 and then from 4 to 5 and then from 5 to 5:30. And, it doesn't stop. You just, you move it. Next feature that's coming that Google Meet, you can just click next. For now, you can at least you need to hang up and go to the next one. Second. But yes, absolutely, and but that's just things where you can try to make a nice setting. Like we do customer meetings each and every month, and we ship everybody like 4 craft beers and have conversations sometimes until 2 a.m. in the morning, because if you would have a customer meeting in real life, you would probably end in a bar sooner or later, and hence you need to like mirror that remotely to a certain extent. By now we just invited to the next one and we don't even know who's speaking and everybody's coming, so like with this diminishing return thing, we seem to have found something that doesn't have a diminishing return. Everybody's signing up and nobody cares who's talking about what at the first part of the meeting.
Great. I think one thing that we all have to consider is introverts versus extroverts and how comfortable they feel around different activities and things we offer. And I think the office has always been featuring extroverts a lot, but also kind of meeting in the coffee kitchen or just going for a beer has not been necessarily something that would be something that everyone would like to do. And I think something that remote work enables is that also introverts feel part of the discussion and can somehow integrate them better than before. I think that's a strength of remote work, that you can integrate people who didn't necessarily feel part of the culture before because it was centered so much around extroverts only. But also, I think if we think about more of asynchronous activities, which our platform, for instance, focuses on, because we do believe that people have also different productivity phases, and flexible work and remote work means everyone can work on different time zones potentially and cannot take part in such sessions because it's not part of their timetable. So how can you include people that actually cannot make these sessions, not because they didn't like the activity, that might be one thing, they might be Zoom fatigued, they might just not find the time. And this is something that we very much try to focus on and think about and reflect on how can we make this happen, and how can we make this make sure that everyone somehow feels included, and yeah, offer different kinds of activities for different types of people as well.
I don't think that works. I don't think we're fully distributed worldwide and don't have a fitting time zone and don't see each other at all and just do it asynchronously works. Like, no way, that's over. There will be settings that work like that, but then we're moving in the distributed autonomous organization space and in like totally virtual companies where we don't even employ people anymore, but just IDs, which will be something that exists in the future, but that's a totally different model. There you'll work at 5 different companies at the same time. So I think if you need social interactions, you need social interaction, and it'll be another 100 years until we have social interaction without social interactions. People like to see faces, and they like that's where the cup comes from. When we had our first on-site after 1.5 years, we made the Real Hugs Rock Cup for the simple reason that we knew that people would fall into each other's arms, because that's just how humans work. And I don't think we can factor that out. And that's why I think to a certain extent, oh, look, it was bound to happen. My camera is too warm. I'll just let it.
Oh. Can we still hear you though? No. I mean, I can just maybe chime in because I wasn't meant to say that. I mean, I already mentioned earlier that in-person communication and meeting is very important, and it's not about only offering asynchronous communication. It's more about how can we make it easier for also introverts to interact and connect, and that's why maybe giving a variety of different aspects. There can be synchronous meetings like offsites. There can be synchronous meetings like virtual team drinks once a month or virtual game nights or whatever. But maybe there can also be asynchronous team building activities that everyone can take part in, also the ones that might potentially not be able to take part in a synchronous event. And I think the mix is something that is very important. And I think of the asynchronous stuff, we're not doing enough yet, because everyone is forced on the virtual Zoom meetings right now. And I think this is just what I wanted to mention. Let's offer a mix for different personality types and different people, and try to be aware of the differences.
I would like to raise a question. This ongoing discussion about Zoom fatigue, shall we switch on video or not? So in the beginning, everyone was 100% on video all the time. And then, trust was somehow, or it had been proven that the trust works also when people are working abroad. And there was the sneaky allowance that people switched off the camera, and there was a lot of research that it's so artificial to see your own face, but also so many other faces close to your eyes. And then it was kind of standard to just dial in and do whatever you want while the all hands meetings were happening. And this is kind of diverging, like we want to see other people, and at the same time, I can't see them anymore. And what is your way you would recommend to other companies who are struggling with this situation these days as a remote expert?
Yeah. So from my perspective, it's being very respectful of people's time, and really understanding what are meetings that we really need to meet in. Is it, for instance, workshops where we want to be creative? Is it where we want to make a decision, but maybe the prioritization has been happening before, or all the material to make the decision has been already handed around before the meeting, right? So that everyone could get familiar. I think it's thinking about how can our in-person conversations, be it now virtual or in person, how can they be more intentionally focused and more purpose-driven? what is really the desired outcome of this meeting. If there's no desired outcome, then we shouldn't have the meeting. No matter if it's now a fun meeting or if it is a productivity-centered meeting. I think if we reflect on all the meetings we have and think about more of update meetings, for instance, just updating each other on things doesn't need to be a meeting. We can write it down in an asynchronous stand-up, for instance. But as mentioned, where you really want to have an outcome, where you have a conflict, where you want to be creative together and do a workshop session, brainstorming together, or if you would really want to bring the team closer together for bonding, then these, I think, are really great ways of how you can bring the team together, be it virtual, be it in offsites, in person, but being really, really, really focused on what you actually want to achieve with a meeting and with the in-person time together. And if this is really clear to everyone, and if there is a clear purpose and a desired outcome, then I think a meeting is very valuable. And I think everyone else will see it the same way.
Yes, and we have some meetings like stand-ups where teams teams do a written stand-up and have a normal stand-up still, but mostly to dude, yesterday I bought fish and made it with whatever, and this was so great. People, for that social interaction part, they need to see each other in the morning and say coffee and here post and so on and so forth. So that's the social part, but that's also where I think the camera needs to be on. I have lots of meetings with the corporator you get, the more the camera is off. The interesting part that will change, I think, is that I recently had another webinar with somebody from Microsoft, I think. And the thing was that the discussion was, do I turn my virtual background on or off now? It's but you can see my closet otherwise. Well, a door. You look weird.
I mean, there are ways you can. There are ways you can basically not show the background on Zoom and Google Hangouts.
Yeah, of course, but then it's just blurry. Then it's just blurry and also weird. So the question is, I think we will be forced to become finer with people being at home and people having we had a guy that was that was in front of his couch and there was always the still to be ironed stuff on the couch. And companies, at the beginning it was weird, and then they just he's at home, and that's just home. That's cool, and we get more familiar with that. The interesting part will be now that if anybody has tried Snapcam, the Snapchat camera, where you can look like a comic character. I know people that specifically made themselves characters based on whatever, that they can look differently. Will that happen? That's the next stage that might happen with people not comfortable showing their faces, with American VCs investing in anonymous companies and stuff. So that might happen. But I think you will see somebody. It will just not be black. It will be, I'll look different. I'll look like a comic character because I don't want you to see me at the moment.
Or maybe you find out as a company that this person actually doesn't have a home office and you need to invest in giving them a co-working space, right? I think there are many ways of how you can go about it. But I hope it helped you, Anna, with the recommendations on. I think it's more. So what I heard from many companies doing hybrid, which I really liked, because if you already have an office, of course have the office, but thinking about how you can structure the office in a way that you're making it happen for that you make it possible for people to bond or better socially connect. So I think if we're speaking about hybrid, one thing that is very important to me, I think you mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if I misunderstood it potentially, but you said it's the worst of both worlds, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think so too. But I only think it is that when you don't have clear guidelines. And so I would always want hybrid companies to think or decide if they are either office first or remote first. I would always obviously speak for the remote first setup, because I think the problem is, and I've seen this in many calls where I was feeling very, very uncomfortable, where I was one of the two people that were remotely and everyone else was sitting in the conference room and speaking to each other while I was speaking. And I was like, this is really disrespectful, right? And I don't feel comfortable right now. I don't feel included. And if you're thinking remote first and just addressing that, maybe it's just a simple thing like if there's only one person that is not part of the meeting that's working from home today, then everyone needs to sit in front of their laptops today. So thinking about different ways of how you can make sure that people don't feel excluded when being either or. And I think the first part to go about it is to make a very clear decision around being office first or remote first. I think that's completely fair to also be office first, yeah. But I think just, it could be this or that, then it's really the worst of both worlds. And I think the other worst thing that I can imagine is forcing people 3 days a week, for instance, still in the office. This I would also not recommend. I think one thing that can work potentially is maybe once a month there's a 1 week office week, or once every 2 weeks, or maybe also once a week there's a team day or something like that, because this is then the purpose is the most important thing, is meeting the team and being together, but not kind of 3 days in the week you need to be there just to sit together. I don't know. think that works.
I think that's a decision by the company itself. Google was built about being like, oh, you liked university? We'll have the same thing. We'll just call it office. That's how Google works. The desks are crammed. You have lots of community spaces and you don't have to leave. And that was the entire point. And the question is, as a company, you can still decide that, and it might be a valid thing. If you're a research organization that does mRNA research, I'm not sure if you want all your scientists at home with their own lab. You want one central lab and them meeting at the kitchen and whatnot and have chit chats and I don't know what. If you have something where you can organize that differently, that's different. If you are in a project setting where you need to invent something new or something, you might need closer interactions. But then you might also say, okay, I'll rent a house for the team for 2 months and they'll just stay at the house, and they can bring their families for all I care. Because we need that reason.
And I think that's where we agree, right?
That's what I mean. You have to you really have to think what the reason is why you're doing this. And I think there's a reason for everything. And there's a time for everything. And I would love going to the Adidas office. It's an amazing office and an amazing communal space. And they really put a lot of effort into making it a meeting place of sharing and meeting people. At the same time, maybe you do it on a weekly basis. I'm there 1 week and then I'm off 3 weeks. I don't know. There's times and places for everything. I don't think it will be all remote.
Just a quick interruption. Anna, wanted to say something?
Yeah, I also believe this again is a matter of the crowd, of your crowd, and some teams really desire to meet in person, not on site, but in person once a week. And I would love to facilitate this. Just send them out for a walk in a park, only to get together, and they don't have to necessarily talk about office-related things. But again, like this bonding thing, especially in early-stage companies who have been grown and born in the remote world. And I of course like the idea also being an office-only company, but having the flexibility to do vacation somewhere in southern France. And again, I believe it's that makes a good employer. And then doesn't matter at all if you are remote or on-site, if you care for the individual needs, and at the same time make sure and facilitate that collaboration can happen, and that there are some opportunities to look outside your daily box.
Absolutely.
needs, and Michelle just posted in the chat something, which is a combination / the question between the correlation between salaries and where you're forced to work. Yeah, Ollie, the remote setup doesn't work that great, right?
Now I have the microphone switched.
That's perfect. Cool. Then we can just continue and wait for the camera to cool down. But yeah, let's stick to salaries and the correlation between salaries and where you're forced to work or / where you want to work. Does that have an impact for you guys?
We need another second thing to talk about remote salaries and salary adoption to different cities or not, and up or down, and global village and lots of things there. But yeah, of course, it's a lot harder to make people move to a different city, no question. And it's a lot harder to get people into an office that don't want to. I just don't think we're in a one-dimensional thing. There are people that want to go to an office. And I think Coinbase announced fully remote with hubs or something. They'll make sure they have offices and potentially even apartments above them in different big hubs. And you just say, okay, if you want to meet in Paris for a week. Meet in London, meet in Berlin, meet in New York, meet in LA, and so on and so forth. And just at a certain size, you'll make hubs in different regions. And
I like that concept.
Yeah,
I wouldn't ever say that we might not in the future have this kind of setup as well if we grow, right? We're only 10 people right now.
Yeah.
So this is completely working the way it does. And everyone, I think it's more important that there's no greenwashing happening and that people really know what they sell into when they go into a company. And there's a lot of companies that say, we're remote. And then you go there and they're like, yeah, so maybe you can come to the office 3 days a week. And I think there just needs to be
100%.
clarity. And I think there are too many companies that still haven't made a decision and are kind of, every other week there's a new update and they still don't know how to go about it. And I think, we made this now for 2 years for the people who really kind of are in this new situation. Come on, you can still change your opinion, but make a decision now, then you can still change it later, because there are always going to be new facts and new things you learn, and then you might need to change and adapt. But kind of being in this wobbly situation where no one really knows, not even the new people being hired, this is the worst thing that can happen, and then everyone will leave. This is I think one problem that I currently see, with many being afraid to make a decision.
I'm talking about salaries. I'm super afraid about what we have to expect over the next years. The more and more companies moving to be fully remote, obviously are super high in competition when it comes to talent. And it's not about forcing people to be on site, but in a situation where everyone from Berlin can work for Facebook and their respective salaries, you are lost in this situation, right?
Shopify announced beginning of the year that they're hiring 5,000 developers and they don't care where they are.
Yeah. Plus, how do you harmonize salaries if one person is living in the Valley, the other one in Hamburg, and the next one somewhere at the Baltic Sea? What is fair? How do you set standards? Do you jump on formulas like Buffer does to pay respect to the living costs? I honestly don't have a clue on this.
We do the formula thing.
Yeah.
Always changing. Basecamp pays San Francisco salaries to everybody. That's their base. They don't care where you live, which is an interesting salary in Kuala Lumpur. But that's what I mentioned with Global Village. So when does it make sense? When it does not make sense? Does it, when we said in the beginning, you might not be able to hire people if you're to have them all move to your city. You might not be able to hire people if you don't pay San Francisco salaries going forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So this will become a global village, and then it will become anonymous, and then you will be hiring avatars with proven backgrounds Like, you know, it'll be interesting where this is going.
That's going to be the new thing then.
Yeah, and we all say like, I don't have this, I don't care about this avatar thing anymore. Okay, so we're having a beer on tap and we're meeting in the office each and every freaking day. And I'm buying, like, maybe we're just moving to like the outskirts of cities and just buying houses and living space and like, everybody move here. We're moving to be a commune. This remote thing is stupid. I have no clue.
So how we currently go about it is that we, so I'm a huge fan of not kind of having too many different levels of salaries in general, not speaking about different countries now, but thinking about salary ranges to make it fair and not kind of speak about gender pay gap and stuff like that, to not even enforce that. So in best case, we don't even have negotiation room. There's really not much either on shares or on salary. This is something that I find very important. I do have to admit, though, I'm also not an expert on salaries when it comes to if we want to later on kind of go into different markets, and this is going to be interesting. So I'm also kind of a bit afraid of that matter still, and we'll obviously need to observe this too. How we go about it right now is that we try to only hire in the European zone. So we have a fixed salary based off of basically European salaries average, kind of, so to say, for different departments. So this is how we go about it right now. I am very impressed with the formula that you have at Giant Swarm. For us, it's, as a startup, early stage, way too complicated. So we try to simplify this as much as possible, not to focus too much on company building, but more on kind of building the product and now kind of getting out there. But
we started with the formula, by the way.
Ah, okay, interesting.
Just saying.
So I think, I mean, I think it's I know the formula, so I think it's a great concept, and I would love to dig deeper into it at some point. Right now, we have the same salary for everyone. If you are in France or in Pakistan or in Germany. And
GitHub,
for now, it works.
Like that. GitHub said everybody makes 100,000 from the cleaning lady until the CEO.
Yeah.
Everybody made 100K.
Yeah, so this is not the case for us. We have obviously different seniority levels for different roles, etc. I'm just saying for the role that we're hiring, if it's the same level and the same department, then everyone earns the same money, no matter how much they can negotiate better than the other person.
We have to admit that sooner or later you will figure out that people that are older need to make more money. That's very, very hard to swallow for younger people. But people that are older make more money. That's just a fact of life. It'll be interesting because at the moment you have young people making a lot of money, and I talk to American, but now we're really, I don't know if we need to move. Maybe we can ask a question and ask if we need to do another one on salaries in remote companies, because that is now diverting very, very quickly. That
definitely is a topic that is...
I'd love to have the discussion.
We need more research as well.
Next panel.
The interesting one, I talked to a US company, one of our customers. The difference there, because here in Europe, you normally you start low and then you have you're going up and whatnot. There, they just start very high and then not a lot changes until you're like irreplaceable. Like I start at 100K and then in 5 years I'm at 108, you know, and then I became irreplaceable and I'm at 250. Like there's not much in between, kind of. Also a totally different model, because they say, like, if they hire out of university, they need to go to 100, 120, 140K, otherwise they don't get people.
Yeah. So this is a complete black box for me. I don't have much experience with it, and I wouldn't kind of want to share more infos on it, because I really don't know. And I think it's a great topic if you want to do another webinar to speak about that, maybe with an expert or maybe people who have done this for a longer time, because I think it is a difficult one. There's probably no right or wrong, but it's also a very, very competitive market. Especially with remote, where it's like, I shouldn't care that somebody is in Kuala Lumpur. Exactly. To remain with the same city. At the same time, we did have to say, with our formula, hiring in Dublin doesn't make sense.
Dublin is more than double Cologne prices.
Yeah.
Cost
Yeah,
of
I would
living.
also not focus on London, for instance, right now, because this is definitely
Yeah.
higher prices than I can pay from a Berlin salary, for instance. So there are obviously things and wiggle room that you have. And that's also the nice thing about remote work, that you can then focus on somewhere else, right? If you proactively at least do recruiting.
Yeah, and that is the interest, because if you want to have the best people, they will live anywhere, and they might want to live in London, and then you just need to pay higher salaries. So it'll be interesting. How do you handle legal aspects and organizational extra workload for employees based abroad? Now we're getting into really weeds of things. There are service companies now for employee of
You are
record.
providers. Yeah,
Exactly.
But if you're a startup, you might just have freelancers.
Yeah.
And that
So to maybe give some, shed some light, what are the different options that we currently offer to our employees? There are 3 models. On the one hand, you can be full-time employed in Germany because we're a German company, right? You have a German contract. This is what could work if you are located in Germany. If you are located somewhere else, there are 2 options. There's the freelancer model, as Oliver just mentioned, and then there's the EOR model. EOR means you're basically lending an employee from the service company, but they are full-time employed with you. The nice thing is that they take care of everything. They also do the payroll for you in these countries for the employees. You can even give shares to employees that are hired through an EOR provider. The downside is that it's quite expensive. So we only offer this as a second kind of step if, for instance, there are some reasons for the freelancer to not be able to do that. There might be, you might have bought a house and you need kind of the official contract, or you want to stay or live in a city based on a visa or whatever. There are sometimes reasons you need to do it, and then we can offer it. But the preferred mode, as Oliver mentioned, is the easiest one, is to just hire someone as a contractor. But there we try to make sure to offer them just the same options in terms of benefits and everything, probation period and stuff like that,
cancellation
as everyone
period.
else.
It's weird talking with contractors, and then we have this cancellation period, like in Germany, of 3 months. Like, what?
But there are options, Margarita, and there are a lot of EOR providers that you can also reach out to, like Workmotion in Germany, like remote.com, like
Deal is
what are
one
they
of
called?
them.
Deal, etc. So they
In
are
the
kind
end-
of growing quite fast right now.
In the end, always remember this is an art, not a science. There's no right
Absolutely.
answer.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah. What we also have done is we have, what's it called? So you can register your company. So, I mean, the 4th option obviously is to have a location in a specific country then. That's the most difficult. That's the tax intensive version, but that's probably the most legal one you can get, legally right option, so to say. This is something that is only recommended to be doing if you're like have 5 to 10 or more employees in a certain location. If this is really a strategic hub you want to build up, then you can go there. What we did is an interim kind of solution in one location, because our co-founder is located in Spain, and we obviously didn't want to hire our co-founder as a freelancer or through an EOR provider. So what we did was we registered our company in Spain, which is an interim kind of version between the having your own location there, or what's it called, and just hiring through freelancer mode. So you basically hire him with a real contract with a Spanish registration, and this works until you have like 5 to 10 employees, and then it's getting into a place where you would also have to register a location really and kind of pay taxes. But with the registration, you don't need to pay taxes, and you can still kind of officially hire the person. It's a nice way. I'm not sure if it is in other countries, but in the EU, there is this option.
Cool. And with that advice, I guess we are already over time a bit.